In a small mining village on the edge of the kingdom, a deadly attack deep in the ore-rich tunnels has left the town's citizens scared and confused. Forced to close the mine until the creatures can be dealt with, the workers are looking for any heroes to come in and save them from the hidden terrors. But your party will work too. Welcome to Quick Quest, where I give you pre-written, ready-to-run adventures that you can use in your own games. This quest is designed for 4 level 1 characters and is a great quest to throw at your players when they're first starting out. Without further ado, let's get started. This quest begins in the small mining town of Stonehaven, built inside an ancient crater. Not the richest city in the world, most of the folks here make their living deep in the mine shafts that line the crater walls, digging up precious metals and gemstones for their rich overseers to ship far away. You could truly set this in any mining town though, so feel free to give the town whatever backstory and local amenities you see fit. Your players could hear about this adventure in a lot of different ways. If they decide to check out the local tavern first, maybe they hear rumors of an attack in the mines and creatures that had even killed a few of their peers. If they're arriving in town at the start of the session, maybe they see it listed on a bounty board with other potential jobs, just one of several offerings for them. Or of course, if this is their very first adventure together, you can just start them all off having been hired to deal with the threat. Either way, once they hear about the quest, they should make their way over to the mines where the foreman can give them more details on what actually happened. Though the foreman wasn't there when it happened, he can still give your party a general rundown of the events. While mining in one of the deeper shafts, a few of the workers opened up a wall to find a cavern beyond. In the dark of the tunnels, they were attacked. Only one who actually saw the monsters managed to stumble out, and they had grievous wounds all across their body. Last time they checked, the miner was still recovering, but they're in a tent nearby. The party wants to see if he has any more clues as to what these monsters might actually be. Regardless, the foreman has completely closed down the entire tunnel system until the threat can be dealt with. The guards did send a few folks in, and they haven't yet returned. So now he's turning to mercenaries to get the job done, and the reward will depend on exactly how rich you'd like your party to be. But some gold and maybe the promise of jewels should be enough to entice your party to head inside. Once they accept the quest and decide to help out these miners, you've got a quest on your hands. Before they head in though, they can stop by the medical tent and see the worker who survived the attack. When they arrive, he'll still be pretty injured and out of it, but at least able to speak and impart some of the details. If your players want to offer some magical healing or a good medicine check, they may be able to get better information out of him. From what he can remember, the attack came quickly, and the creatures were lizard-like in appearance, though they stood up on 2 legs. He remembers them literally popping in out of nowhere all along the walls of the caves, as though they'd been perfectly disguised. The creatures your party will be seeking are called Troglodytes, which are a bit like a cross between a dude and a chameleon. They're able to blend into their surroundings to hide better, and if your players learn this fact from the miner, that'll help them out later on. There's one other thing that he can remember if your party helps heal him up a little, and that is that the stench of the creatures was unbearable. He remembers almost passing out from the smell alone when one attacked him, but thankfully he was able to get away before it could finish him off. Again, this information will help the party out when they come face to face with the monsters inside the mines. Delving into the mines, your players will need to make their way through the twisting tunnels in order to find the Troglodytes. You can have this done with a survival or investigation check, and based on how well they do, you can have them either run into an obstacle or find something that could be useful. This is a mine shaft after all. On a success, maybe they run into some precious gems that were left behind as the workers rushed out of here. Or maybe see something old and long forgotten that's lodged into one of the rock walls. And on a failure, they might have to deal with the cave-in. I'd assume lots of dexterity saves in that case, or maybe roll against exhaustion as they spend hours doubling back and crisscrossing through all of the different tunnels. Eventually, they'll reach a shorter pass that opens into a large cavern, their destination. Since this was just dug up, there's no light in here. Your players will either need to bring a torch or use a spell in order to see. The walls of the cavern are rough, with stalactites that hang from the ceiling. All across the cold ground, the bodies of miners that didn't escape the attack, and the guards that were sent to find them, lay exposed and decaying. Though your players with higher passive perception, or that are good at medicine, may notice that a few look like they've been chewed on. Using their chameleon skin ability, the Troglodytes are hiding in this room, camouflaged with the walls of the cavern. You can roll a group stealth check for the hidden monsters, with advantage, as per their ability, against the player's perception, to see who can spot the creatures first. If they talked with the injured miner earlier and learned that these monsters can in fact change their appearance, I'd give your party advantage on the perception checks as well. If the players spot the creatures first, then I'd let one of them have an opportunity to start combat with an attack. Maybe an arrow shot at the nearest one, or a firebolt to knock it off the wall. If the troglodytes remain unspotted, I narrate how one of the players notices the wall shift a bit, and just like that, the creatures are on them. You can always rule that one side or the other is surprised to start combat, but be very careful before doing so. If your players manage to get the drop on the troglodytes, the combat will likely be very trivial, with your players sweeping through the enemies easily. But if the reverse is true, and the troglodytes surprise most or all of your party, it could easily turn into a full-blown TPK. I'll leave this up to your discretion, but especially if this is their very first combat, it might be better to give them a small advantage in the fight rather than use surprise here. Regardless, once both sides are engaged in the battle, it's time to roll initiative. Though they aren't the strongest monsters in the manual, troglodytes are no slouches for a low-level party. Each of them gets 3 attacks on their turn, so if even one gets lucky and hits with each one or gets a crit, it can quickly swing combat in their favor. Couple that with their stench ability, which forces any of your players that start their turn next to the stinking lizards to make a constitution save or be poisoned, and they should be a stiff challenge for the group. When I originally ran this, I only had 3 players, and while they won, it was a lot tougher than I expected. 4 players should be enough to get through alright, especially if they get the drop on the monsters, but be wary, this shouldn't be super easy. If your players helped heal up that miner earlier, then don't forget to remind them of what they learned if they didn't write it down. Knowing that these creatures have an overpowering stench will clue them in to keep their distance, helping them avoid making those constitution saves. Of course, the troglodytes only have melee attacks, so they'll be looking to close that gap as best they can through the whole fight, meaning tactically positioning is going to be a big deal for this one. If you have more players or they're a higher level, you can always add a troglodyte or 2 to spice things up. The higher level your players are, the less likely those +4 attacks are going to hit. You can also use the cavern terrain as a way to keep your players on their toes. Falling stalactites between rounds, large boulders to use for cover, mining equipment that's been left around for impromptu weapons, the battlefield itself can easily become a factor in the fight. Once your party has slain the troglodytes and restored calm to the mines, they can return to the surface and meet with the foreman to claim their reward. Back in town, the players can grab their gold and be on their way. Or, if you're looking for a longer adventure, this can be a great lead-in to a whole subterranean storyline. Who knows what drove those troglodytes into the mines? Maybe there's something deeper in for your players to find. Or, perhaps now that they've proven themselves, the city guard have another task for them to complete. This one a little more dangerous, but also a little more rewarding. Whether this is the end of the road or just the beginning, your players can at least rest easy knowing that the miners are safe, ending this quick quest. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you got some inspiration and ideas that you can use in your own games. If you like this quest or have suggestions for how it can be even better, let me know in the comments. And if you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like and consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make quick quests like these, as well as videos about DMing, tips for how to make your games even better, monster breakdowns, and all sorts of things. So if you like the video, stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.